But going back to what you mentioned about COVID, I think it's so sad that so many students missed out on the in-person learning during COVID, whether you were a college student or in high school or lower school. I mean, all of the learning that was lost there. How do you feel like Harvard kind of handled the remote learning aspect of maybe 1 to 2 years of your college experience?
Mm. Well, it was hard for everyone. I mean, I think that many of my professors and teaching fellows handled it the best that they could. But of course, the quality of the education was diminished, and people were extremely lenient. Also, because we were on Zoom, so deadlines were not as firm as they usually would be in person. So look, it's just a fact that we had a step down in our educative experience while we were online. But again, I feel so lucky because at least I was in college when this happened. I can't imagine what it must be like for, people who are younger, and those are really the formative years of their education. And for them to just have to be online and not, and for them to have a step down, that impacted, that cohort of people way more than it would impact someone like me. So I feel kind of lucky that I just barely escaped.
Yeah, for sure. And when you think about kind of just the more social element of it, how did you think the students dealt with that? Because you can, in some ways, maybe learn things online, but it's hard to make friends online or, kind of have more of those college experiences when you're not meeting other people. How do you think most people dealt with their friendships as far as not really being able to see people?
Oh, I think it had an enormous impact. I mean, I even saw it among people my age. Just when we came back to Harvard for our senior year, so many of my friends said, I feel like I forgot how to socialize. I feel like I'm socially awkward now because I haven't been around people in so long. So again, I just go back to, I can't imagine like for people who haven't, who are not yet well versed in socialization. But it's a real tragedy because I just think about all the people that I could have met, um, all of the friendships I could have formed, experiences I could have had that were just taken away from us. So
Yeah.
there is a big loss.
Yeah. I had a friend, she transferred to Harvard for law school, but she literally didn't experience Harvard after transferring because that was like the 1 to 2 years that it was on lockdown. So she's like, I graduated from there, but I didn't actually get to go there, which was crazy. But so I'm guessing you are in California now. Is that where you are because Dennis is there, or where are you
Yes,
based out of?
yes, yes. I'm back home in Los Angeles,
Okay,
much to my
cool.
parents' delight.
Oh, well, that's nice. How are you dealing with LA? I know I've heard about the homelessness crisis there. So many issues going on in California, but what is that like kind of moving back to California now being a conservative as opposed to being more on the liberal side?
It's a great question because I just see the city so much differently now that I'm conservative. And growing up, as awful as it sounds, I just kind of considered homelessness to be a fact of living in Los Angeles. And now that I've come home, I've seen it just increase so much. And I've also more so questioned the policies behind it. What is causing this? I feel like I'm much more of an engaged citizen. But I actually had the option, thanks to Salem, of starting out in New York City. And I almost chose that because, as I'm sure you're aware, so many people in my generation, after they graduate from college, they go to live in New York City. And actually, one of the principal reasons why I chose not to go to New York City and go back to Los Angeles is because of the crime and homelessness. As bad as Los Angeles is, at least most of us drive around in our cars, which sort of provide a safety buffer. But in New York City, you have to walk or you have to take the subway. And I have had friends who literally as recently as a few days ago, one of my friends was on the subway and a homeless woman threw a glass bottle at her and it just shattered. And she said, one of the pieces could have gone in my eye and gouged my eye out. So again, as bad as Los Angeles is, I actually chose it because I thought it was safer than the alternative. And that's
Yeah.
really telling us how bad things are because, as we both know, Los Angeles has just gone down the tubes. And it is such a tragedy that Rick Caruso did not win as mayor of LA because I have zero faith that Karen Bass will solve that problem. She was originally a defund the police person. And then, like so many of the Democrats, conveniently did a 180 and said, oh, no, I'm for the police. But
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's
we'll
so hard.
see.
Right, because it's like you're choosing between two of the most liberal cities in the
Yes.
country. And I think San Francisco may be one of the worst as far as homelessness.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you were to kind of give a message to maybe some young people on college campuses, what would be your message to them as someone who went through that experience?
My message to them would be, the most powerful thing that you can give a person is your example. And when I was sent home due to COVID, I briefly explained finding Dennis and forming a professional relationship with him. I started being on his show regularly while I was still a student at Harvard. And I was really expecting people to cancel me and ridicule me. And of course, I had that to some extent. But actually, a lot of people were very kind. And that's kind of going back to what I said, at the start of this interview, that there are more people out there who are silently conservative or